step inside the lab, where the sparks ignite. Ideas take flight in the glow of the bite. We're sketching in logic, prototyping bold, turning Zoom dreams into apps that unfold. OAuth flows and breakout plans. We write the code with our own hands. No theory here, we go full now. This is where Zoom ideas come to come. Welcome to the lab, where the builders unite, crafting custom apps that just feel right. From concept to launch, we crack the code. Let Zoom ideas come to code. Need a reaction tool or some speaker cues? We'll show you the build, not just the news. Zoom Apps SDK, we play and explore. With each line of code, we open the door. Debug in real time, test it with flair. Build it for Zoom, launch it from air. Every big feature was started this way in a lab like ours. Just a dev day away. Caught us in the lab. Don't go it alone. Your Zoom-powered visions can find their home. We turn ideas into tools that explode. This is where Zoom ideas come to code. So join us in love, or catch up with our YouTube tribe, and boom with Lord Zoom.
Hello and welcome to Lord Zoom Development Lab, and today we're going to look at OAuth. Now, on the face of it, I thought OAuth was pretty well covered by Zoom documentation, but when I started using it in November of last year, I found that although it's well documented, it's not so well explained. And what I mean by that is it's not well explained. The context of what you need to do is not there, and some of the information is not there. And frankly, if you try using AI to build your app, even a simple app, it doesn't work. It puts in big mistakes, it misses things out, it doesn't really know what it's doing. And that's because there is now, Zoom API has been around for a while now, and there's a lot of old code, and there's a lot of bad code, and there's a lot of out-of-date code. And therefore the AI just doesn't know what to make of it. Also, of course, the other problem with Zoom, which is good, but in this case causes trouble, is there are so many different ways you can write code for Zoom. And of course, if you give all that information to anybody, let alone an AI, they are going to get confused. So in this presentation, I want to do another one of my simple overviews. And this one, the objective is to get an OAuth registration with Zoom, and from that to be able to get a list of upcoming meetings. That's all we want to do. Create a list of upcoming meetings. And I have an app on my laptop here. I'm going to show it to you. And it's a very simple app, and I will probably share a version of it to the recording later. And we're going to go through that and explain what it is. So for those wanting to know what's going on in the background, very simply, I have a machine here. I'm actually running a video switching program called vMix, and that's how I put myself up in this little, whoops, wrong, got a opposite, in this little corner here, so that I can share the rest of the screen with you. And the rest of the screen belongs to that laptop over there, and we're getting the data through a simple video switcher, an ATEM Mini. That's the tech, nice and simple, but it allows me to show you what we want to do without my Zoom overcoming what we're going to be running on the machine. So let's have a look at the code. And the first thing we need to do is work our way, I believe, through the entire process. So if we need to have an OAuth conversation, we need some codes. If we need to talk to Zoom, we need some codes. And we get that through the Zoom marketplace. So whatever you do, you have to do it through the Zoom marketplace. There is a document from Zoom that will show you how this is done, and I'll show it to you now. I'll bring it down into the screen so we can see it. This is in the docs, and you can just search for OAuth app Zoom and you'll get to this URL. And it tells you the first thing you need to do is to go to the Zoom marketplace. Now the Zoom marketplace is where all the apps are authorized and configured. So we'll go to the Zoom marketplace, and the first thing of course you need to do is sign in. So I'll just sign in with the account that I'm using. Now you notice I didn't put username and password in. That's because I'm already signed into this Zoom account. And because I'm already signed into this Zoom account, when I go to the marketplace and I say log in, it picks up my login from that Zoom account, and that way I'm logged in straight away. And from that I can then build an app. And so the sort of app we would want to create for an OAuth would be a general app. Yes, you can have a server-to-server auth app, but I want a general app. And for most things, that's what you want to. So we create a general app, and then the two things that we need from this app are going to be this client ID and client secret. The client ID and the client secret are your keys that will allow the app to be authorized by Zoom. So what does that mean? That means that when you have a look at the code, there is a authorization operation that you need to do. And what that does in non-tech speak, or semi-tech speak, is it goes to the Zoom marketplace with those two codes and the URL of where the app lives. And those are the three credentials that it uses to introduce itself to the marketplace. The marketplace will then know what it is because it will recognize those three figures and will confirm them and validate them. And will then take notice of who you are, your login, will pop up the box for the app so you can, as a human, authorize the app. But in the process, it's also now making a connection between the app, the marketplace, and you. And it will give back to the app two keys. One is the token that the user can then use to talk to Zoom to the API. And the other is a refresh token. Because the token, for security reasons, and I love this Zoom, I do love this, the token only is valid for 60 minutes. After 60 minutes, it's invalid. So if anyone was to get access to that token that has been generated by Marketplace for you personally, that token only exists for 60 minutes and then it is revoked. At that point, you need to pull out your refresh token, and then you do a request to Zoom with your refresh token, and you're given a new valid token to continue your conversation with Zoom. Now, I have seen some really weird data about the refresh token, saying that the refresh token is available for 15 years. It's not. It's definitely not available for 15 years. The best advice I have is that it's valid for about 3 months. But if your user's not using the app for a couple of months, then I'm concerned anyhow. So I think 3 months is probably a valid issue. it is possible, I understand, to speak to Zoom and to get the limit changed in certain circumstances, but for normal use, I think a key lasting for 3 months is pretty good, because I mean, if you think about it, most of the tokens that we use in our browsers usually expire in a month. So that's the process we need to go to. We need to go to the app, and so you can see the app here. I've put my I've collected my client ID and secret ID. I then need to say how the app is going to work. Is it going to be an admin app or is it going to be a user app? Most cases you want to keep it as a user app. If it's going to be an admin app, that means it's got admin rights across the whole account. So I'm going to be looking for my meetings. As a user, I can see my meetings. As an admin, I would be able to go and look at everybody's meetings. So you need to make sure that you do not ask for more access than you, well, I was going to say deserve, than you need, than is valid for your use case. That is important if you're running it for your own security for yourself, because you don't want to give the app more access to information than you need it to have, because that just creates a increased risk in the security area. The next thing you need to do when you create the app is you need an OAuth redirect. So this is the URL that the app's going to use when it brings back to you your token and your refresh token. This software cannot run on localhost. It has to be running on an outside URL on the internet. I'm running it on my laptop here, but I'm using ngrok to give me an outside URL. So that's how I'm going to be able to talk to my app, and I'll show you that running in a second. After that, all you need to do in the Marketplace app, all you need to do in the Marketplace app really is you put your URL in here, and then you need to define what this app's going to get up to. So, are you going to subscribe to events? So are you going to have webhooks? Well, we're not dealing with those today, but you would be able to say if you're going to access webhooks. Webhooks, of course, allow the system to tell you something's happened. So, for instance, I could use the webhook, which I know there is one, to tell me when a new meeting is created. My app is going to look at all the meetings. But if I put a webhook in that allowed me to know when a meeting had been added, I could then go back to Zoom and say, oh, a meeting's been added. Can I have a new list just to make sure I've got all the items there? Or of course I could use the webhook to find out what the meeting was that was added. Then you may also want to put a home URL. That is important, but not for exactly what we're doing today. But you would traditionally just put that as the root, or you may put it as something else. Then we need to know where our app's going to be running, because obviously when it's running in different places or running with different systems, then that's when it's going to have access to different things. So if I'm going to have an app that gives me lists of meetings, the chances are I'm probably running in the meeting space. Yeah. Do I need the SDK installed? Well, not for what we're doing. So we can go straight past all of that. And I've now missed what I wanted. So this is when I go backwards. And I apologise for doing that, but it's just the way my logic works, and I have to do this. So the next thing I look at is what are the scopes of what I'm doing. And the scopes are the global features of what you may need to get data to. But actually, we want to go to the next level, which is if we go back down to Surface again, well, if I can click the right button, what I actually want to do is I want to speak to the SDK, because I want an app ID. So I want to be able to go in here and get No, I probably don't need it for this. I can get away with the scopes, and I can get the app AD. I have got one here I've created for you before, obviously. So I need to go to, what I really need to do, not for me but for you, is go to Zoom API. And I would go here, and I would find out, and by the way, this always takes you to the wrong place. Make sure you go to the new documentation. What you want to do is you want to come into here and you want to find out what the commands you need to do your various things. Now I happen to know that a meetings API needs a meeting call. So you can see there's some examples here of the meeting API. So if I click on meetings, these are all the things. So here we are. So I can post, I can delete, I can get user IDs, I can get meetings, I can get meeting IDs, I can get the list of registrants in meetings. So there's quite a lot of meetings API data available here. I can even update meetings information. I can create meetings with this. So this is the meetings API. This is the meetings API that I'll be using when we get to the end. So let's just summarize what we've basically done. We've basically gone in and we've created a app definition, and that app definition allows us to have the secret keys and allows us to know where the test version is going to be. And then you need a Node npm environment to run this type of app. So that's what I've got. I've got a Node npm system running here, and I can pull down the Node block, and if I cancel it for a second and I CLS, all I'm doing is I'm doing an np run dev, which is compiling and running my code on port 3000, and then nrock is running, and nrock is looking at that port 3000 and putting it out as an external URL, which I've then given to my marketplace app, and my marketplace app can then be seen. So I can go to the website and my site will appear. So I go to my list of servers. I've got an ngrok server here, and there's my app running. So I have something that is extra. I have a check URL here, which tells me my access token has expired, but my refresh token exists. So I've engineered this. I ran it earlier so that I knew my access token would expire before we got to this. So in most cases, you're going to be in a situation when the app is running that your access token will have expired, and somebody will come along and run your code, and you will still have the refresh token. So you will have to decide where you store this information so that it can be retrieved when somebody comes back into your program. Let me say that again. You can't keep this data in cookies. You don't know where it's going to run from. You need, once somebody's installed the app, you need it to be, the credentials to be stored somewhere. So if somebody comes back and runs the app again, you've already been authorized, and you need to have access to authorization data. Turning it around back to front here. Let's now look at what happens when you do authorize. And this is just using local storage, so this isn't a very sophisticated system here. So I have an authenticate call, and when I do the authenticate call, you can see I do a marketplace call. I authorize URL, which is a dedicated URL in Zoom, and I pass it my client ID, and I'm also passing my client secret, but that's encoded, which is one of the places where people have problems when they do this. And I also have a URL here confirming where the app is to return, and that will be checked by the marketplace that that is the place where it should return. And it now asks me permission to do what I want to do. Now this is my demo app, so it's got a lot of permissions for a lot of other apps that I'm running at the same time. But you basically have to allow it like you would anybody, and it comes back. Now it's come back. If I do a check, you will see it's now got a refresh token and an access token. So it's collected those from Zoom. Zoom has provided those. Again, they're encoded. It's decoded them and stored them. So if I now call the function, which is your meetings, view your meetings, and I put some random ones in here just to give us something to look at. View your meetings. It does an API call and it gives me a list of meetings back. It even gives me the join links. So I have a set of meetings from the system. Now, if I was to wait an hour, and I don't consider we sit here having a chat for an hour to do this, but if I was to wait here an hour and my check would then tell me that my access token had expired, we would not re-authenticate with the user. We would just get a new access token. And that's it. I go to Zoom, I say, please can I have a new access token? I give it my refresh token and it gives me a new access token. Of course, I'm not showing you the data of those tokens because it's just a big long string and just looks silly. But I now have refreshed my access token. It's a new access token, but it allows me now to view my meetings all over again. Doesn't it seem easy now? That's just the point of OAuth. It is really easy. The problem is when it doesn't work, it's actually quite tricky sometimes to work out what the heck went wrong. Because it's not just your app that's working. You're having a conversation with a Zoom marketplace. And if you don't send it the right information or decode the information that comes back in the right way, nothing works. And you just get invalid returns from Zoom. And when you try and ask it a question, it just says, who are you? So that's why it needs to work properly. And of course it does need an external URL. I think it's a pretty obvious now why it needs an external URL, because you're sending a message to Zoom, then Zoom validates who you are and sends a message back. So if you're faking it and you're not the right person, you won't get that message back. And if you are the right person, you need an external URL so you can get that message. And by the way, don't have apps running on the same URLs or the same domain. Put them on separate subdomains. Otherwise, as I found over Christmas, Zoom gets confused and your apps suddenly start behaving weirdly because they're not really quite sure who you are. Because these tokens and refresh tokens are specific to the user that's asked for them. They're not a general one for the app. They're not a general one for you on all the apps. They are specific for you. So Zoom knows from those tokens who you are and which app you're connected to. That's all encoded. Well, not encoded, but it's all available to Zoom because you have that particular code back. And this is where, if you used Zoom AI, and I did check again today, you will never get anywhere with this. There is an example on the Zoom repository on GitHub, a simple OAuth, and it does work. But I believe there's one major boo-boo, otherwise known as problem. Because this is quite original, when the code was originally written, the encryption library was separate to the main Node library. It is now built in. So that's a mistake that you need to correct when you, if you use the one off the GitHub. If you want to bring all your libraries up to date, which obviously we all want to keep up to date libraries, you will have to stop that being in the dependency list, and you'll need to make that a a link straight through, and I can show you that bit of code as well. So let's have a look. Should we have a look at a bit of code? Should we have some fun with a bit of code? Now this is written John's format, so if you don't like it, that's fine. You can write your own version, but this is written in John format. So this is written to help me. It's the way my brain works. It's the way my apps work, and I have over 100 variation apps on my system. So I have a particular way I run them so that I can make sense of all of them at one time. So let's have a look at the app, and I want to show you some specific things that I have added to the system to make it work better. So the beginning of the system, we're going to need these. We're going to need Express. We're running Node on Express. We need Axios because that's holding the conversation. I've got a body parser and a cookie parser so that I can interpret the data that's coming back from Zoom, and I've got a JWE web token, which you don't really need for this app. That doesn't really need to be there. And of course, I'm pulling in all my data from a .env file, which is fine for demo and it's fine for development. But please, once you go into something that's in production, even if it's production just for your organization, please do not use .envs, because people can just read them straight off the internet and get your credentials, and then they've got they haven't got a guaranteed way to hack into you, but you don't want to give your credentials away. You really don't. Then we've got some basic stuff, setting up the system. I have a couple of modules that I use for generating a header and generating an error, so that's allowing me to do that layout. And then I have the port 3000 as default, which is the port for the internal port for running this. And then obviously, as I said, ngrok sends it out as an external URL. And the first thing I do, of course, is to read those 3 values that we talked about into the system from my .env. When you've got a proper system running, obviously you're going to put that somewhere much more secure and encrypted. Please make sure that when you store this data, you are encrypted. It's one of the primary requirements of Zoom for anything that goes in production, that this data must be encrypted. So it's a good habit to encrypt it, even if you're just using it locally on your development system. The next bit, you don't need to do this for this app to work, but Zoom is really quite keen that your browser is locked down and can't be hacked, and therefore it does like a lot of, and I can never get the acronym right, but CCSP, security, correct, and that's what this is all about. So this is the content security policy for the browser. If you get this wrong, when you put your home directory in, Zoom will check your home directory and will shout at you if it's not correct. In a development environment, you can carry on using it. If you get to production, you'd have to have this locked down. Frankly, if you've got an app running anywhere, you should have this locked down. You don't want people inserting JavaScript and other bits of malicious code in your app. So please, just because the app's simple, don't make it simple for people to break in. And then we have the stars of the show. Our main calls. Now, obviously, of all these, you can discount the check auth because that's the one that I've added that allows me to see my tokens are valid for this demo. You don't really need that one, but you need the login because that's going to be a conversation off to Zoom. You're going to need the auth, that's going to reply to Zoom, and you're also going to be able to get the refresh token as well. So we can have a look at that. And the code that I use is almost, I think it's almost identical to the version that Zoom provided in the beginning. And then I've got a check here, which I'm not using at the moment, but that would be the ultimate check, that if I haven't got an access token, then obviously I need to go to Zoom and log in. The app can't run without an access token because an access token is the conversation. Or I may want to set this up to do, to set up for a refresh. And then I've got a few little extra ones. See, I've got a welcome route, so I can do /meetings, and that's the call that I do to go and get the API for meetings. I've got a /user, which gets me my user ID. I'm not going to show that on your screen now. I'd probably have to reset it then. And then I've also got a /home, so I've got an option for the home page to bring me back. And then I've got my little error handler on my 404 page for people who put gobbledygook in. And we were doing a little thing earlier about the next stage, and therefore, just as an example of that, I've got a next stage. So this is actually taking the system to the next level and adding a meeting, which is part of a course set that I'm doing for everybody later. So let's have a look at auth routes, because that's the most exciting and also the most boring of the lot, because all it does is get you into the system, which is boring, but it's exciting that it actually gets you into the system, because when your system doesn't work, this is much better. So I'm going to zoom this bit up because I want you to see a bit more about what's going on when I can remember which button I press to get a zoom on. On the other hand, I'm not going to zoom it for you because I can't get the button to work for some reason. You'll have to look at it small. I'm terribly sorry. This is the auth routes library, and now that's a search and replace. I thought inspiration, I had it there. Let's get rid of that again. Go away. So the header is going to be just the same from the start, because we need to install all the modules that are going to work for this particular piece of code. So we've got all the Axios and the Express and the body parser and everything. And we've also got a get user ID, which is part of my new system. We don't need that. We have the ability here to load the .env file with the 3 values we need, because if we're going to have a conversation with Zoom, we need those 3 values. And we've got some override information here. You can have these as constants because these are generic, global, whatever you want to call them, for everybody, everywhere, using Zoom. These are the things you need. So the first thing we have is the login, and the login is really easy and also really tricky, because remember, the login sends the information to Zoom. It says who you are, so it's got your client ID from Zoom. It's got your redirect URL, so it's telling you where you can come, where Zoom needs to come back to give you the answer. But it also has an encrypted version of your password. And then when the data comes back, it comes back with an auth here. And again, it comes back with the authorization code encrypted. And that's why these functions are sitting in the middle to decode the data. And this was the thing that I had a problem with, because the encoding, as I said, was an old library. And when I updated the library, I had problems. So that's why I had to change mine. Not change much, but just make sure the libraries work. So that decodes the auth, which is the callback. And then I just save the data, I know, in a cookie, which I shouldn't do, but this is only a demo and I don't need to store it anywhere special. It's running locally on this machine. It doesn't need to be stored anywhere special. So I just store it, and I give mine a return back to the root, and that's it. And then my check auth program, which you don't need, but this is my validation check, just checks whether the token is for access and refresh is available, and just reports back, so I know what the state of that is. Because I am the logic here. I haven't written the logic. I am the logic. I need to press it, see what it is, and then if I need to do a refresh token, then this is the function for doing the refresh token. Again, I'm calling the Zoom backend, and I'm saying, can I have a code? I'm passing the normal codes, and I'm encoding my refresh token, and I'm sending back the data and having a conversation. And then I have a new token call for getting some refresh tokens back. and here it is. So get refresh, and I have a refresh token as well. That's it. That's all there is to it. Once I've got all those, then I have the power, because once I've got all of those, I can then do clever things like this. So this is, go away. This is my meeting.js. So again, it's got the same headers as you'd see before. And I have a get meetings call, which will then do a call to the meetings API. It's got my authorization code, my access code, in the back as a bearer token authentication to Zoom. So Zoom knows who I am from that token. And then all I've got to do is process the data that comes back. It comes back as a array, and therefore I've got this little format datetime function here to help me process the date, so that I've got the start time and the end time. And you can see I'm using that to format my start time and date time there. I get back the duration and I get back a join link, and there we have an example API running on our system. Now, if you thought I rushed through the code, I apologize, but I did that on purpose because I really wanted you to think about the process. It's the process that can get you stuck. Once the code works, it's the process that will, frankly, if you don't remember the process and you go through the process problem, that's what's going to get you problems further along the line. If you don't remember how long your tokens are going to last and when you need to refresh them, you're going to run down the road and you're going to do APIs, and suddenly the APIs are not going to work, and it's because you haven't got the basics running. So what do I mean by the basics? I mean that you want to check, this doesn't, because I'm doing it for demonstration by hand. You want to check before you do any API calls, you want to check that your token your access token is valid. If it's expired, you need to do a refresh first and then go and get your data. That's the logic you need to have in your whole process all the time. Behind that, at the next level down or the next level up, depending on which way you're looking at it, you need to have this data stored somewhere, securely encrypted, so that when this user appears, you can give that data to the app, so the app can then do that and can gather those values, so it can then go and make requests off Zoom, because you don't want to keep doing the login and get them to do an authorize every time they run the app. You want that to be set up once, and you should be able to run that for almost ever, except of course if you then develop your app and then you need to add more scopes or more APIs to be used in your app, you will then need to go back and ask the user to reauthorize the app with the new permissions. That's the point at which you will need to go back to get them to approve the new permissions. And then once you have the new permissions authorized, you can then carry on using them. I'm just going to check my slideshow, which I haven't bored you with, but I've been following my world around on the way. The other summary was to remind you the common problems that I have found, both as myself and also through the community where I'm an MVP developer. We've had problems with people who weren't encrypting their keys properly, or maybe they had that library problem that meant their keys weren't encrypted properly. I've had people and myself the problem that the crypto library is now included in Node and not externally. Don't forget that every time you do an API call, it's not just the API call, you must have the bearer token with your access token encrypted in the background. The authority of those tokens only lasts for 60 minutes, so to be careful, I give mine an expiry date of 55 minutes, and if it's expired, I will automatically go and get a new one. When you go from running it locally on a machine like this and you then want to take it to a production environment, even if you're going to run in developer mode for the whole life, when you want to put it on a server somewhere, don't just upload all the libraries, rebuild them on the server, because there could be server issues. Before you develop too far, see if there are any server issues, because I have differences between my local Node development and the hosting server that I'm using for my apps, and I had to make sure that the two were compatible with each other, because although I'm using Node, as you know, there are so many different flavors and ways you can run it. So I'm running straight JavaScript now, because I found that I had problems when I run modules on my particular server configuration. So check about that. Make sure when you do your marketplace entry, make sure your auth and your home are correct and they're validated by Zoom and that they're coming back correctly. It is possible to make errors there, and quite frankly, you might want to use a different URL so that you're different to everybody else, because no one else can see what those are. Well, they can to a degree, but you may want to put them somewhere different, and if you do, just make sure you're consistent and they come back and they are HTTPS, and don't use the same subdomain for multiple apps, because your tokens can get confused. Zoom uses your URL as one way of validating you. If you have them all as the same URL, it does seem to confuse Zoom. Zoom hasn't told me this. I know it from a bad experience over Christmas when I accidentally had two apps trying to run on the same URL. So, what are the future considerations if I take this to being a sensible app? Well, the first thing, of course, is remove the secret keys and everything from the env file, put it somewhere more secure. Also, with the tokens in some sort of database, and encrypt them from the start. If you ever go to production, you will have to be encrypted by Zoom. That's one of the conditions they have. Frankly, you should encrypt your keys anyhow, so please start that from the start. Consider how your app will interact with the refresh token. If you're looking for an idea of where to do that, you might want to use the home directory call. If you look that up on Zoom, you can actually get Zoom to pass you back the some IDs about the user when they go to the home directory, so you can then use that as a reference to go and collect your data. You can create your app and have it working, and if it's just for your organization, there is no need to go back to Zoom for production rights. You can run it as a development app within your own org forever, and if you then update your app for your org and you're running it through the development level, you don't have to go back to Zoom to agree for the update to put in production. If you're in production, every time you do an update, you have to make a request to Zoom to approve it. So if you're running something in your own org, you don't really want that delay. You just want to get a fix and get it out there to support your own organization. So run in development mode, and you can deliver those updates whenever you like, because it's your org, it's your app, it's your development cycle. You have full control. If you are going to develop multiple apps, each app needs to have its own entry in the marketplace, needs to have its own URL, and needs to have its own keys. So the reason why I've got an app which seems to have permissions to do everything is I found that developing lots of separate apps to demonstrate different things was just becoming a nightmare. And so I sucked them all into one app, which can then demonstrate all the functions. But I only have to have it authorized and one URL, and therefore it's a much easier environment, although it is sometimes hard to extract out a particular piece of code and then put it back into my framework to make it work elsewhere. And the last thing is, I've been through the process, and I have to tell you that publishing an app is a big commitment. Thank you very much, Zoom, for all this hassle you give us, because it is all warranted. We don't want, as a community, we don't want bad apps going out there and worrying people. So the rules set by Zoom on the apps are really good. CCSP, if I've got the acronym wrong again, but the content security policy means that you're going to be forced to write apps that people can't start injecting horrible things, JavaScript and all the other horrible things that they try and inject into pages. That's just not allowed, because your content security policy will lock it down. You have to have privacy policies, you have to have support links, you have to have all the things that you expect a good app developer to have, all forced onto you by Zoom, and the app has to be approved. And if you make updates, the updates have to be pre-approved. So you have to end up with effectively 3 versions of your app. You have your development version, which you're playing with. You have the active version, which is out there that people are using. And then you have the next release version, which you put out there and you test. And it's then you tell Zoom that that's the release version, and then they check that. And when you approve that, you can then upload that to be your release version. So you always have your release version, your next version, and what you're playing in development all separate. And of course, the development version could run locally. The other 2 must be running on the cloud, on a cloud server. You don't want them running on a laptop on ngrok. No way. So that's the end of my OAuth presentation. I hope it's useful for you. If there are any questions, okay, somebody said, is there anything hidden under the right hand side? There isn't. It's only the short value, the summary on the right hand side. So there is nothing on the right hand side that we've really missed. I will publish a version of this code. I say a version because there's a few things that we were running another training on, and I've added some stuff, so I'll probably take that back out again and then just release the code in its shorter version. And then what you can do is you can go to the one provided by Zoom and you can compare that with my one, and then you'll probably learn even more by looking at what Zoom gave originally and what I've converted it to. Zoom have given us so many APIs. I understand there are thousands of APIs. Not just in meetings, but in webinars, in contact center. There is so much there. There is so much you can do with Zoom, with APIs. I just get excited every time I go on a meeting with somebody, or we're on a webinar and we're talking about stuff and we're using Zoom. There will be at some point during that session that I will, ooh, we can't do that. Can we do it with an API? And I'll suddenly start thinking of another idea to write another app. Thankfully, I don't remember all of them at the end of the call and write them all, but it is an exciting environment. It's so much fun. You can add so much value. And join us in the development community. Come on the forum. Be great to see you there. Zoom has its own meetings every 2 weeks for developers who have issues they need. And of course, for those who are at the corporate level or the, shall I say, the more professional level, if you don't want the community forum, there are paid options where you can talk to the Zoom engineers and get things sorted as well. So thank you very much for your time, and I will leave you with your coding. So remember, this is where Zoom ideas come to code. Thanks for being with me. Goodbye.
Step inside the lab, where the sparks ignite. Ideas take flight in the glow of the bite. We're sketching in logic, prototyping bold, turning Zoom dreams into apps that unfold.